Hello and welcome to Dyslexia Solutions. I have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Laura Obando, and she's a woman who's proud of being dyslexia. We talk about dyslexia being a trait of genius. And you know what? You have to work hard if you're dyslexic, but listen to her journey about her ambitions for her work as a teacher and putting herself through college without accommodations, which we don't advise, but listen to her story. And she also has 2 young kids, and she's keeping her eye out for them as well. But she comes from a generation of dyslexic people, and 1 out of 5 people have dyslexia. So you're not alone out there. And I think this interview is really going to encourage you. Laura, come on out to the stage.
Hi, Marianne. Thank you so much for bringing me on and giving me the opportunity to share my story.
It's really good to meet you. And, I meet people who, lately I've been meeting so many people who love having dyslexia because they are creative. And once in a while, I'll have someone who just doesn't understand why me, why do I have to go through this? However, what I really love about your story is your tenacity. You had a vision of what you wanted to do in spite of how teachers told you wouldn't amount to much. So how would you like to introduce yourself to the audience before you go into your story of being a young girl when you were diagnosed, and then your desires to go to college, and then your career, what you're doing as a career?
I'd say I'd introduce myself as a mom first and foremost, family person, Christian woman, God-loving, God-fearing. But dyslexia is also a big part of me, and it's also a big part of who I am. It took me a long time growing up to really kind of accept it. And I would say, really accept it in myself. That's really kind of the big thing. As I went through life, learning, when I finally had that acceptance of it, I learned how to deal with it, and I learned how to deal with other people in handling it, because dyslexia does not only just involve school, it involves everyday life, how you do things, how you do your normal day-to-day routine, how you log into this podcast where I had to get my husband to come help me because I got things backwards. All those things play a part. So that's been the huge part. And now finally achieving my goal of always wanting to be a teacher, because I've always wanted to help other kids, especially kids with disabilities.
Yeah, that's really sweet. I was also called when I started working in a mental health hospital, and I saw, kids that challenged emotionally, and that was the call the Lord put on my heart to start working with kids with disabilities. I didn't know it was going to be dyslexia though. So now one of the first questions I asked you was, is this your first career? And you said no. So tell the audience what your first career was.
So my first career, when it came time for me to transition out of high school and into college, that was kind of like a no man's land. We were like, what do I do? What can I do? It was really, no one really knew kind of where to do. The only thing everybody kind of knew that was around me and in my circle and my family, they knew I was great with kids. So I went into actually early childhood, and I did get my associates in early childhood, and I have a background for 15 plus years working in childcare and all that good stuff. But it wasn't always necessarily the end goal. Um, I was just, I didn't trust myself to get through the basic skills test for teaching for a very long time. And that's something I kept secret and kept hidden for many, many years. I didn't tell anybody that I was extremely scared that even if I did make it through a teaching program, that I wouldn't be able to pass a basic skills test because of my disability, which is something that I was able to prove myself wrong over this past year.
Yeah, some of these teaching tests that we are required to take are pretty rigorous. And in fact, with some transparency, when I was first getting my credential, there was a test called the MSAT, and I took it 3 times. And I had graduated from UC Santa Barbara, and I didn't need to take the MSAT. I was just taking it because it was the new requirement, but I didn't need to because the liberal arts program at UC Santa Barbara was so comprehensive. So I was able to waive that. And I've never had a need to share that with anybody because I've taken so many tests above and beyond that. But it is very frustrating because, to be honest, the tests are very different. You could take one test and you miss something, so you study for it, and then you take the next test and it's totally different. And I found that mostly in math.
Yep.
The first math test, man, it had so much calculation in it. And then the second math test didn't have. And, even though I would get a total score that was correct, I was always a little bit short in the math area. And it was just, what a racket, I thought. But someone said, don't complain about it. These are the hoops you have to jump through if you want to be a teacher. And look at all we still do. There's so many requirements and we're persevering.
Absolutely. I can remember it took me, I think ironically, the first test I passed out of it was actually the reading test. I actually passed that with no issues, which is kind of funny. But when it came to the other tests, math, it took me quite a few times. And I have my own opinion about the basic skills test, and that's a whole nother kit and caboodle for another conversation that could take us hours. But the hard part taking those tests is I had to take them by proctor. I didn't really have anywhere I could set up. We ended up setting it up in my master bathroom because I couldn't be in our office with other computer screens. And so I took it in there. I couldn't say anything out loud. I could not read out loud to myself. All the skills that I had been taught in high school on how to manage on a test, they would buzz through and they're like, if you talk again, we're going to cancel your test. And I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to do?
No.
And in order for me to get the accommodations needed, I needed an up-to-date diagnosis from someone that was certified to say that I had dyslexia, and it had to be within the past year. And then it also took another 2 to 3 months for me to get approval. And the approval was at their discretion for what I needed. It was not going by what the doctor or whoever would recommend. It was at their discretion. And that would take up another 2 to 3 months to do that. And the program that I got into here, I couldn't wait that long. I would still be trying to take the test if I waited for those accommodations. So I was better off taking it and passing and failing and then learning and then going back and taking it again. So eventually I did pass all of them and get into my teaching program that I needed.
Well, and I applaud you. I just have so many memories of other things I've done where, well, I just want to first of all say that if you're not called to education, you won't persevere. When you can persevere, it's by God's grace that we're still here, because we need good teachers in the field, and it has to be a call because you have to have a passion for the kids. You have to have a passion for knowledge and a desire to be a lifelong learner. There was a grant that I wrote, and this is just a segue of having 4 different evaluators who evaluated the grant I wrote. And some, scored it high, some scored it medium, some scored it low, and they just merged them. And it's just amazing how different evaluators will skew the scoring, and it's very subjective. So we just need to persevere.
It's very interesting what a lot of people don't realize with the IDEA Act that's put into place, which is great and has so many benefits for so many people, that is more of a public school thing. That actually ages out once you're out of high school, or they will give people up to the age of 21, but it's whatever comes first. If you're graduated and you're going to school at the appropriate age, unless you have documentation, those colleges and universities are not giving up their resources to help you get through anything. They want documentation. They're going to make you go through hoops to get any accommodations.
Isn't that something? One of the gals on our board, Christina Bacour, she loved working with animals as she was a child, and she went to be a veterinarian. She's been studying to be a veterinarian. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science, and she didn't have any accommodations either. And I think you just find strategies of how to get through. I think working with teams of people is so important. I have a friend who John Rodriguez, who went to Harvard, and he tells his story in his book about having different people in a group, a study team, summarize different chapters of the book. And then he would get all the summaries. He would get through the reading that way. And there's that creativity that dyslexic
Absolutely.
people have. And but the interesting thing is there are accommodations for adults. And I've been able to assess, college students whose schools couldn't find their records. Like you said, they want a brand new record. And it's nice to have that paper. I'm not a school psychologist or a professional in that regard, but I've been working with dyslexia for 18 years, so I can assess for dyslexia. And those packets, you take it to the bank. It's like taking it to the bank.
It really is to help your child get through. I will say, the climate of education has been much more friendly towards people with dyslexia. And that's something they're training all teachers on now, to look for students and different ways to work with them, which I think is amazing. Growing up in the 90s, they didn't have those things. It was, you got some help, but it was really, you do it our way. And I'm learning.
Laura, now that you're trained with about dyslexia, let me ask you, in your teacher program, to what depth, because we're in California now, Laura's in Georgia.
Yep.
So in California, we're still working on our framework because our teachers aren't being told the definition of dyslexia, saying the word dyslexia. They're not told really what to look for and how to remediate for it. In Georgia, they've really done a better job on that.
Yay, Georgia. I'm still, yes, yay, Georgia. I am still fairly new to Georgia, but everything I have seen so far they really have pushed. I actually have a class I have to take for my teaching program coming up in November, and it's a week-long class, and it's working with dyslexic learners. And everyone is required in the program to have that in order to complete, to get our completed certificate. But, there's a lot more openness to it. It's still kind of a 50-50 depending on personalities, people's beliefs. You still find, though, there are some of these teachers that believe that, hey, it should be one way. No, children learn many different ways, and studies and things have proven that. But teachers are a lot more open to doing hands-on activities where, back then it was pencil and paper, where we're really, where I'm at, they've been pushing small groups and hands-on, differentiating the learning so we can get everybody where they need to be and get them to overcome those hurdles.
And, after you get your training, because I also have it's a 6 to 8 hour training. And when you're working with a group, you have that interaction. It's the I do, the we do, the you do method model.
I do, you
but
do,
it's
we
that
do.
hands-on. When you're actually with that student and practicing, that's when you're going to be learning. So I'm so excited that you're doing that. You're going to be having that.
It's really amazing, and it gives me a really nice vantage point with the parents, especially a parent that's very hesitant to have their child evaluated, or they kind of come up and they say, I don't want my child labeled. Well, it's not necessarily the label, but you got to understand there's a bunch of the red tape and all that stuff behind it. So in order to get them those services, we need that done. And being able to relate to parents, and they're kind of like, wait, you went through this? Yep. We sat through IEP meetings every fall, every spring, sat through all my teachers sitting there talking about me and, all the goals and everything. So
talking about me.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you're like, as a kid, you're like, wait a minute. Okay, this is my goal. Okay. All with good intentions, but, having that point to be able to relate to parents. So it gives me that common ground for them to help kind of open up that conversation.
One of the things you mentioned when we first spoke was about Dean Brinegar and how he would say we were not born with the reading brain, like we were to see and hear. And the printing press, it was the printing press that came out, that immediately 20% of our
Mhm.
population felt like they were just dummies, and they weren't. They were the creative dyslexic people. But there's
Yeah.
videos out there that talk about the brilliance of dyslexia and the geniuses that we have now, among us. So talk to me
Mhm.
about how you're co-teaching right now,
Yes, I
correct?
am. I am the homeroom teacher for a co-teach classroom. So where we're kind of at in the school year, we've got a lot of kids that are either being reevaluated or maybe identifying different specific needs. So where I'm working on developing on my small groups in my classroom, that's key, because I'm going, okay, we can work on this skill. And if this is not really working and we're not seeing too much improvement after so long working on these skills, it can give me the notes I need to bring it to the correct people within the school system. And, it's actually really nice to see that you get a lot more people that are open, especially Hollywood. You see actors like Tom Holland that comes out, that played Spider-Man. He's dyslexic. Keira Knightley's dyslexic. And it's just our
And
minds
Keanu
works.
Reeves.
Yes, our minds work in a different way.
Yeah.
And if you live with somebody that's dyslexic, a child, an adult, my husband will even tell you, he's like, why are you doing it that way? I'm like, because it works for me. It
That's,
just does.
and it's so neat that he's so supportive of you,
Hmm.
and he
Absolutely.
sees your brilliance. So tell the audience about your two little kiddos.
Oh, I've got a 6-year-old that is in first grade, and then I've got a very lively 2-year-old.
Very exciting.
So,
And
yes.
but you have dyslexia in your grandparents, right?
Yep.
So
We
there's that
do.
generational the
Mhm.
gene. 40% of people who have dyslexia have a genetic dyslexia.
Yeah. And we have found, obviously, we don't have exact proof because they didn't test for things back then,
Right.
So we do think that my grandpa had it, and we do think that my dad may have it. And there's all the other family members that we think may have had it, but they didn't test back in that time. I was tested in, I think, 92, which was 2 years after they revamped IDEA, or it changed it to. So still very little was known. For me, it was if one teacher had not spoken up to my mom saying, hey, I think there's something else going on here, I would have never got the help that I needed.
Isn't that
Now,
something?
yeah,
Yeah, even Leonardo da Vinci, they didn't test
mhm,
him, but they're seeing all the signs that he was dyslexic. And one of
mhm,
the not only did he write cursive backwards, but he would say one of his favorite pastimes is to have people read to him.
mhm,
You know,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And, as it goes for reading, if I didn't have that teacher that stepped in and said something to get me evaluated, my second grade teacher was very old school and we had some really bad experiences there. And so I never would have got the help that I needed. Now I can read perfectly fine
Mhm.
at a level that's where I should be. Comprehension is where I struggle with. Um, but I can go back and reread and I have those techniques. It just took me longer than the average. And that's what I kind of joke and
Yeah.
always say. I always get there and I always learn. I'm going to struggle for a little while until I really understand it. But once I get it, I get it. So I always kind of say it takes me longer than most. It took me 7 years to get my bachelor's degree. Most people it takes 4 or 5. So, you know, life
Right.
is just different for everybody a little
It
bit.
really is. And it took me 6 years to get my doctorate. I
Mm-hmm.
just chose to take one class at a time because I was raising kids and they were already middle school and high school. What are some of the strategies you use to help your comprehension?
Ooh,
That'll
not
help a lot of
necessarily my
people.
favorite thing to go through,
Okay.
but it's one of those things that, I am just now kind of as an adult getting back into reading and just reading for fun. I remember I had an 8th grade teacher that told me that, if you can't find a book in my book area, you're going to fail 8th grade English. Um, Understanding what is read is very hard, but they do a lot of different things where I read a lot, sometimes on a tablet or on my phone, and you can flip the screen where it's not on white with
Hmm.
black writing, it's black with white writing. Different things like that seem to really help me um, kind of track better. going along with the sentences and different things like that. Now, when it comes to a very large textbook, it's going to take me a while to get through. And I've learned that I cannot multitask and do that. Some people can just kind of go through those things. I actually have to sit and I have to make notes, a lot of sticky notes, a lot of side notes, and going back. Like I said, though, once I get it, I get it. It's just that initial point of trying to make it through.
And I love when the schools those teachers are equipped to help all kids learn how to comprehend. That's hard for a lot of kids. I guess because the attention is short.
It is. And that's it's really a hard skill to learn, because you get all these different people that create these tests that the kids have to take. And you've got all these standardized tests, and we won't get into all the reasons for those, but there are questions on there specifically intended to trip you up. But someone that's dyslexic is going to look at that and I'm going, what? And they're going to struggle. And as a kid, it's very hard to get through those things because you get discouraged and you really can't get too much assistance on those things without the proper accommodations and the proper evaluations and papers in order.
A lot of those tests that just kill the self-esteem of these dyslexic children, parents don't know this, but in middle and high school, they can sign a waiver for having their kids taking those standardized tests. And the schools allow a percentage of families to do that. So if people listening to this, this podcast would be benefited from that, to know that they shouldn't be shy to request that their kids waive that. It just, locks them away in that room, and they just fail anyway. It's just crazy. And the thing is, you have the IEP and you have all the information of how your child's doing. So why go through all that headache? We always tried to get that out of the special ed, and they just insist on having it. I even taught in the prisons and the probation camps, and they still have the same tests. And then the one student in the probation camp that was going to do really well on the standardized test, he ended up being put into solitary confinement the day of the testing because there was a fight that broke out. So
yeah. And what I don't think people realize is there's really various different degrees with dyslexia. It is not just you have dyslexia and all of us have the same issues. There are different subcategories to it. There are different parts to it. People are just starting to hear about it's dyscalculia, with numbers and different things like that. So where some people, they struggle a lot harder than others. And, I remember me in math class with one of my high school students, and one of my friends, he was in our special education group with our consultant, and we were so bad at math, and we finally just looked at each other when we took a quiz. He's like, what'd you get? And I'm like, what'd you get? He goes, nope, I failed. I'm like, okay, I beat you this time. I didn't. We were competing for like the lowest grade at one point because we were just done with it. But dyslexia is a thing that I think with the right encouragement and the right support, you're unlimited to what you can do. And that's what I think parents need to realize. It's not a curse. It's a blessing. You just have to find the blessing within it.
Yes, I love that. I love how you're not shy to even let your students know that you're dyslexic. And that's another thing Christina Bacour does, is she would, speaks to the classes and the young kids and lets them know you're different. Just persevere, have your goals. And another thing that the audience probably knows if they're subscribers, and if you're not a subscriber, you need to subscribe now. But dyslexic people thrive in entrepreneurism, architecture, the arts, and engineering. But if there's other things that you require a degree for, by all means, go to college, be a surgeon, be a teacher, and get tested so that you can get those accommodations. It'll just make life easier for you.
It absolutely will. And it will help. And I think, for all the parents out there, and I know it's probably a hard pill to swallow if, no one wants to see their kids struggle, whether it's with,
That's right.
A disability or anything medical related. No parent wants that. But unfortunately, those are things that we can't change. But the way you look at it and the way you encourage your child really make the difference.
Well, and I noticed, you have an intact family. Your husband's there to
Mm-hmm.
help you and support you. There's a lot of single moms out there, single dads, and
Mm-hmm.
they see those symptoms in their kids, and they just, the child going from home to home, and I
Absolutely.
see that, and it just kind of breaks my heart too, because I want to help those kids too, but they have another issue hindering them a little bit there, and then with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So
It really, that kind of goes back to where, as educators, our classroom and our school buildings are a home away from home for a lot of these kids, and especially kids that are in those situations. It's those teachers every single day that come in, show up, and spend time with them. You get
yeah,
it's all the teachers, your EIP teachers, your homeroom teachers, your general ed teachers, your special ed teachers. All these people play a part. And that's what, parents need to realize, is that they're there to help you, and making the school environment as positive for the children and welcoming is huge, and building those relationships.
yeah, it's got to be a safe place, and that's the part of being in the classroom I miss
Mm-hmm.
for those classroom things. um we're going to wrap this up, and this has been a
Absolutely.
very good interview with you. What would be some closing thoughts that you'd want to share?
Oh, let's see. I would say, don't give up, keep going. And for all those people that have their dyslexic or a child with disabilities kind of in that transition, especially from teenager to young adulthood, listen to them, see what they want to do, support them. It may take them a little bit longer, but they will get there if it's something that they really truly want to do. So stay behind, and lean on the people. Try to listen to the teachers that are in your child's life and talking to you. Keep in mind, they're there to help you. They're not trying to come against you. They're not trying to set up roadblocks or anything else. They're all there to help and support you.
Well said. That's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us, Laura. And my
Thank you,
guest today
guys.
was Laura Obando. I want to thank you for being here, everyone. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. We are a nonprofit, 501c3, and you can find our website at dyslexia-solutions.com if you'd be interested in making a donation to keep these interviews going. We are funded by donations, and appreciate all your viewing right now. And please share this with other people. You can put some comments in the question, put some questions in the comment section if you have some. I know we talk about IEPs and
Mm-hmm.
FAPE and
Some
IDA,
language that,
IDA. Yeah, people might need some clarification what those are. So
yeah.
we're here for you, but press on. And I want to wish you all a very blessed day. Thank you for
Thank
being with
you.
us. Bye-bye now.